Thank you for joining us today for 10 Minutes with the Artist, an episodic series that explores the professional practice and the personal vision that guides artists. On today's episode, we're very proud to have Jayce Kraviec. Jayce exhibited her recent works from the series Shishin at the Memorial Union Gallery for the 2015 Baccalaureate Exhibition. Shishin is a collection of wearable attire and prints that merge historical as well as modern clothing to create a new seamless identity. I'm Anthony Ferris, and this is 10 Minutes with the Artist. Welcome, Jayce.
Hi.
One of the things that people may notice when they're walking past the gallery is that there's these 4 costumed figures, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that may not be something that they are traditionally thinking that they're going to see in a gallery.
Mm-hmm.
So can you talk a little bit about how these costume figures fit in sort of the fine art context of being in a gallery?
Right. So a lot of my work, when it comes to the costumes, I wanted to take some of the influence that I've found at, for instance, the Chicago Institute of Art. When you go there, you can see outfits that are from Africa or the Native American cultures here in the United States. So I used a lot of the reference and how they had stuff set up at the Chicago Institute of Art, and I brought that back here to the Memorial Union Gallery. So part of what I was doing with the costumes is designing functional attire that could have lived within and outside of the gallery. All 4 of the costumes were worn at one point at the steampunk convention TeslaCon in Middleton, Wisconsin. So for me, they had kind of a dual life. They lived outside of the gallery, but then when they came to live in the gallery, that served more as a documentation of the life that they had outside in a more historical context.
Okay. The pieces are pretty dynamic, okay, in their detail, but in the gallery setting, they're sort of static, right? So can you talk a little bit about what the difference is between viewing it in a gallery setting and maybe how you expect other people to experience the work?
Right. Viewing it in a gallery, there's more time to actually sit there and look at the craftsmanship and the detail. When the outfits are in motion, you don't get that ability to get within inches of it and take a look at how is it sewn. How are, for instance, Genbu stripes put onto the fabric? You don't get that experience as much when you're with them while they're on someone and moving, because then you have that extra, well, I'm in your bubble. How do I work when within your personal space? Is it okay if I get in your personal space? So the viewer has a little bit more leeway to get close to them in the gallery to see how they're crafted.
And where would people see them otherwise?
They were, like I said, they were seen at TeslaCon, so that would have been the biggest area. They might make a reappearance at CoreCon, which is a local convention here in Fargo, North Dakota, I think next June-ish. So they might make a reappearance there, but otherwise it would just be like little conventions when we decide to break them out again. I
like that idea of the sort of activity with them. So can you talk a little bit about the placement of the work, maybe the direction of how you set them up?
So each one of the costumes, and there are prints that go with them as well, are facing the direction that they belong to. So Genbu is facing north because he's the deity of the north. Seryu is the eastern deity, so she faces the east. Suzaku is the south, and, it's been a while. Byakko is facing the west. And then the prints that correspond with them are also facing those same directions.
There's this sort of intricacy, as I mentioned, the detail that you put into the work. And I was wondering if maybe there was some sort of detail that we might not notice as a viewer that you were attracted to or really interested in that you wanted to share with us.
My favorite is historically in Japan, pleats were a really big thing. in Japan, the pleats were very important because peasants would have between 2 to 4, and members of the court would have between 8 to 12, depending on their status. The redbird Suzaku has 14 pleats on the front and 14 on the back for a total of 28. And then as a joke, because the model who was wearing the red bird was like, gonna have more pleats than you. This is gonna be wonderful. And I was like, well, I'm gonna one up you. So Seryu, the blue dragon, which I actually wore, has 20 pleats on the front and 20 pleats on the back. So it's kind of a really fun fact for me on both a historical context level and this was like an inside joke between the models wearing them. So.
So the prints in the costume have like almost like a different energy to them. The prints are like there's like a lot of movement in them that is sort of implied. Can you talk a little bit about that sort of like excitement and movement in the prints, and then the pieces as a whole?
So for the prints, I wanted to make sure that they had that energy. I wanted them not to be dwarfed by the costumes, and I knew that was a very serious issue when I was designing them. So I figured that, well, I'm going to make them bold via limited color use, and I was going to give all of the figures that kind of dynamic pose that either references like either kung fu or some kind of martial art that might be related to those deities, or like dances, so that they have that movement and the fluidity to make them feel like they could just jump off of the page.
And some of the additions to the work are prefabricated. Okay, so can you tell us just a little bit about the advantages and maybe some of the disadvantages of using found fabrics or found objects in your work?
Okay, so there was some I love thrift store shopping. It's one of my favorite things. And one of the biggest advantages was I would just go to the thrift store and be like, this would be wonderful. I'm going to include this. That was a really big thing for like the poncho, or the crocheted poncho that was for Seryu. I actually had owned that from a thrift store for a little while, and I was like, well, this outfit needs a little bit something more. It kind of feels like it's lacking. And then I was like, I'm just going to put it on and see what happens. And then it was like this eureka moment of, this rounds it all out. This is perfect. Yeah. There was a little bit of difficulty. I did buy some things that I didn't actually end up using. Byakko was actually supposed to be like adorned in metal objects. I had an old walkie-talkie, some binoculars that collapsed down almost like a compact mirror. Those were really cool, but it was like, how am I going to fit all of these on there? So I guess that was the biggest thing, is I would buy some things for the outfits and then realize that they weren't going to work. So it was that kind of shifting through everything. Right. And does this go? Does this not go? Will it be stronger with or without it? Yeah.
Well, one of the things that we like to do as we're finishing up is just like to ask a couple of quick questions, a little speed round here. So if you are ready, what time of day do you feel most creative?
2 to 6 a.m. in the morning when I haven't been sleeping.
Okay. Do you listen to music or
I do.
Anything while you're creating?
I do. It's pretty varied. I have like 30 Pandora stations that I shuffle between depending on my mood. I listen to like disco, and there's a lot of Asian pop, which unfortunately I don't know exactly what they're saying, but they have some pretty funky backbeats, so it keeps me really hooked. Yeah.
Is there anything that you're reading right now?
I'm reading a lot of webcomics.
Okay.
They're comics that have their life on the internet, and then they update every week. So it's kind of like reading the old newspaper comics, but it's on the internet format.
Any websites that you want to share that?
Oh, my gosh. I love, it's actually a company, it's called thehiveworks.com. They have about 30 or 40, I haven't really counted, but it's approximation, that they have up, and then it links to all of the individual websites. My favorite right now would probably be Progress and Daughters of the Lilies.
Okay.
They're very action-packed, and they have great, like, movements that one day I want to incorporate more into my own art. So.
Okay. And then I guess our last question would be, what's next?
The big question.
Yeah.
Next for me right now is I'm going to join pairs at NDSU. It's their local, that works with local artists to use the printmaking facilities at the NDSU campus. And I'm going to build up my resume so that I can start applying for residencies in Japan, because my biggest goal right now is to learn how to do the mokuhanga technique from Japan. It's a non-toxic technique that uses water-based inks instead of oil-based inks. And it's very specialized, so I thought that would be really interesting, and I really enjoy the color that the mokuhanga prints have.
Oh. Okay. Well, thank you so very much.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank our guest today, and I'd also like to thank you for your time as well as your interest in the professional practice and creative endeavors of our students here at North Dakota State University. So thank you, and for everyone here at the Memorial Union Gallery, keep creative.